Thank you for joining us for an exclusive screening of Last Call at the Oasis. And we are joined here today with the director of the film. I'd like to introduce to you Jessica Yu.
Thanks, guys. Thanks so much, and I would love if you have any questions. As you can see, the film kind of covers a lot of ground, so I imagine there could be a lot of different questions as well. Anybody have anything? Yes, please.
Well, us being here in California, specifically Bay Area, which probably has a pretty good regime of enforcement. At least that's public perception among Bay Area people, that we've got these strong management districts, and water isn't, although we try to conserve, it's not like a local problem. At least that's the Bay Area perception. Could you talk about that?
Sure. Well, what's interesting is that everything about water is connected, right? So you might have a strong water district in one area, but if there's a lot of water pressures, and there's the chapter in the film that's about water in California and agriculture. And I just remember I grew up in Northern California, and I remember growing up, we were very aware of drought, but drought was always something that felt like it was a periodic thing, when you have like a really dry year, then you have the bucket in the shower, and you got the low flow shower head that just feels like someone's spitting on you. You did these those kind of measures. And what was really stunning to me working on this film was seeing that we have a lot of the same problems, but the time frame in which really dire consequences will be happening is really short. So in the film, when we talk about California, what people are taking into account is the reliance on groundwater. So in agriculture, hey, you get low rainfall that year, we're just digging deeper into our groundwater sources. And the tricky thing is no one knows how much is left. You can tell how much is taken out, but any time you're taking water out of the ground, then of course the quality of the water gets compromised. And then a lot of it is water that's just not being replenished at the rate that it's been taken out, or not replenished at all. So that's the real big mystery. So when we had Jay Famiglietti, who's the professor in there who was using NASA technology to study levels of groundwater, when he said that the aquifer under the Central Valley, where a quarter of our produce is grown, maybe there's at low end 60 years that those aquifers could be depleted. I mean, I just remember feeling like walking out there a little stunned, thinking, this isn't that far off, this is like a generation. So I think that's kind of the wake-up call for all of California. Yes. Questions? Hi.
Absolutely beautiful to watch and look at, and learned a lot about this, so thank you very much.
Oh, thank you.
I do understand, most projects like this, there's only so much that you can put in. So is there anything that you really look back at putting so much work into this and going, I wish this could have gone in there, but it just can't?
It's a really good question. Okay, so two things. One is that, and actually I don't know if I wish we could have put it in there, but a big issue that is not really covered in the film is the whole area of water law. I mean, this is one problem. You could talk about conservation, you can talk about changing agricultural practices, but the truth is, especially in the United States, from state to state, the ownership of water and how people can access it, it's different in different regions. And anytime you talk about taking someone's water rights away, it's a huge mess. So like Robert Glennon, who's one of the experts in the film, he talked about how, he said, if you want to be employed for the rest of your life easily, he goes, go into water law. It's going to be, I think it's kind of scary, because that's, even apart from politics, I don't know legally how you can stop things from being gummed up in the courts when the time frame is so small. The other thing that I wanted to put in the film was, so the section on Singapore, when we first went to Singapore, I was interested in trying to make more of a connection between water supply, quantity and quality, and so this whole issue of sanitation was really big for us. So we went there to go to the World Toilet Summit, And it just sounded like such an exciting event. And they have all this new toilet technology. A lot of it's about waterless toilets, but it's also addressing the need for greater sanitation because you have 2.6 billion people around the world who don't have access to sanitation, and so you have a lot of waterborne disease. You have pollution of water resources, and it's a terrible problem. So we filmed with a wonderful Singaporean former businessman named Jack Sim, and he calls himself Mr. Toilet. And he's got such a great story because when he turned 40, he decided he had 14 companies, and he had this epiphany where he thought, what am I doing this for? I could just keep doing this, but what's my life about? So he decided to look at where was a cause that had the greatest need, and he ended up turning to sanitation because it's such a taboo. So that's what he's been doing for years. We filmed a little segment about him. Couldn't fit it in this film, but we cut a short that was just at Sundance, and it's called Meet Mr. Toilet. So that one had a happy ending because we were able to do something separate with it. Yes.
Hi, Jessica. Thank you for sharing Last Call at the Oasis with us here at Google. I was curious, just the film, it's coming out in May, being released by Participant Media.
Actually, the film is being released by ATO, which is a distribution company called Art Takes Over. Participant was more of the funding entity, but everyone's kind of working together to get the word out.
Okay, great. So Participant is well known for other provocative documentaries like Inconvenient Truth, Food Inc. And I was curious as to what type of action are you hoping people to take after watching this film? Is it largely to inform the public, or are you hoping to have, to actually influence some of these water issues?
Okay, that's an excellent question. And actually, if you have more specific questions along those lines, Lynn Hirschfeld from Participant is here. She's sitting at the back table there. Well, the interesting thing about water is it's such a multifaceted issue. And at the end, people said, well, you're going to have a list of things that people can do, actions you can take. And it's hard because there's actually, it's kind of a strength in that there are so many different things that we can do. So I think it can look like a pretty desperate picture until you realize that because most of us really aren't doing too much to address water, that if everyone were to do something, we could really make a big difference. So, the point is, I think that what we were looking at is changes that you can do on the micro level, swapping out your lawn, taking shorter showers, getting more efficient appliances, to the macro level of trying to affect policy and, making changes like in your own, companies or places of business. And there's international issues. So there's so many different levels. And there was a good quote I read the other day, which was, there's no silver bullet, think silver buckshot. And I thought that was such a great quote because I think the tendency is to want, okay, what do we need to do and have one solution. With water, it's so connected to everything. It's hard to point to change a light bulb or one prescription like that.
Great. And then I have one other question. It's a different topic. But is that reclaimed water product that Jack Black was hawking, is that actually real, or was it just a comedy bit?
The whole thing was an experiment. We weren't suggesting that recycled water should be sold as a bottled water product, but because it has such a negative perception, we thought, let's try to give it all the advantages of a bottled water product. So it's funny because people afterwards, it's almost succeeded too well. They were like, where can we buy the recycled water? But it was just to see what does it take to overcome the perception of what's good for you and what's not. I mean, there's that incredible irony that it's probably the purest water that you can get out there, but everyone's just so turned off by it. In Orange County, where we got the recycled water for the experiment, they liked some of the ideas so much that they want to use that in their own campaigns to help spread the word. So we're hoping that that is one of the concrete advances that the film can help move forward. So we're hoping that that's something that communities can use to help their people embrace that idea.
Yeah, it would be a funny film tie-in that at the end of the screening, you can go and try out some of this water yourself.
We've been thinking about that. I still have a whole bunch of porcelain springs in the office, so it's really. And I tried it actually when we were in Singapore. What they do, it's sort of interesting. They bottle it, and any sort of, like you go to a public meeting or a place where the government officials, and they just serve that there. So they get a lot of free publicity of, everyone's drinking what they call new water. And we had it there, and it's funny, it almost tastes, you know how distilled water feels different on the tongue? It's a little, almost like dry, which is a strange sensation. It's like that, it just is incredibly clean. Thanks. Anybody else?
Hello, thanks
Hi.
so much. That was really interesting. I enjoyed watching that. I had a question about water filters. So
Yeah.
I don't think that it came up too much, but one of my thoughts was, well, if I implement a water filter on my tap, that might alleviate some of the issues, and I don't have to have bottled water. What do you think about that? Do you think that that's something that's I know a lot of people already do that. So what are your thoughts, and do you think that that's a way to help resolve the issue?
Sure. I mean, I'm not a water filter expert, but Peter Gleick, who is one of our main experts, I remember everybody, it still comes down to feeling like, well, what do we drink? And he said he's asked that question all the time. He generally says that, I mean, speaking for Peter here, but if you live in a municipality, your water is tested a lot more than your bottled water would be. So I think bottled water as being safer is a bit of a fallacy. But he said, if you're worried about your water, sometimes people think their water tastes funny. It's probably their pipes. Put a filter on the end, and that can certainly help with taste. And if you're concerned about other things in the water, I think the issue, though, of the new contaminants is something that is not really addressed by either of those processes very well. So that's where the very intensive processing that recycled water goes through is more successful at removing things than what we generally have out of the tap or in bottled water products.
Yeah, and then the other thought was, would the filters even catch a lot of the stuff that's newer, or those contaminants that were found?
When they talk about trace pharmaceuticals and parts per trillion, like the guy at the sewage plant says, that we're state of the art and this is not what we're built for. So that's something that we need to do to address in new infrastructure. But it's weird, right? Because, you see in the film, we don't want to pay for, it's very unpopular, the idea of, hey, let's pay for a new sewage treatment plant. I mean, it's just politically very difficult to get that point across. But if you look at how much we're already paying for bottled water, we're spending that money. We're spending it individually. It's like the difference between wanting to improve public school and sending your kids to private school. I think it feels more immediate for people, so if they can do it, they just pay for it there. But I think if we were to upgrade the entire system, we could do better for everybody.
Yeah. You covered about the conservation and the effectiveness of those methods. So it just make me wonder if all the economics of water is right. For example, the price of the water is correct. Maybe in the future, do you see we pay like 3 or 4 times of the water price, either residential or agriculture?
Oh, that's a great question, and actually that's a point that I wish we could have made clear in the film. We had it in there for a while, but okay, in Singapore, where they really manage their water problems extremely well, and it's public education, and it's also like just forcing everyone, this is what we're doing, and they have they're always developing new technology. Well, the cost of their water is passed on to the public there. So if you ask the average Singaporean the cost of their water bill, they'll probably know. You ask the average person on the street, it just doesn't really register. So I think that if you pass along the cost of the water to the public, they'll conserve more and they'll be more aware of it. I think it's inevitable that some pricing will have to change. But again, it's politically extremely unpopular, especially in this country. Like in Fresno, where, that's, in Central Valley, it was only last year that they even had water meters put in. So people had no idea how much water they were using, and there was huge protest when they finally said, guys, we actually should figure out how much water we're using and make people pay for it. Great. So anybody have anything else? And afterwards, if you have any questions for me or Lynn, we're here. And you can also look at, we have the social action part of the participant umbrella is called Take Part, and there's a lot of resources and information there. So thanks so much again, and thank you, Matt and Jennifer.
Yeah, let's give Jessica a round of applause. Thank you.